achieved.
I traditionally start my show with an MMA-related rant, but in light of the recent tragedy that has taken place in Las Vegas, I feel it's important to acknowledge said event. My heart goes out to all those affected by this senseless act, and it's impossible to measure the impact on the lives of the people that have been touched by this atrocity. I would hope that a tragedy such as this one would bring about the common sense resolution to the issue of gun control in the United States, but as previous tragedies have shown us, that will not be the case. Those who stand against the regulation and control of gun ownership in the United States cry foul whenever this issue is brought up. They claim safety and protection as their reasoning, but the weapons used in this and countless other attacks are not those that are used for protection. They are used and constructed for one purpose and one purpose only: the efficient eradication of life. It saddens me to know that the NRA and gun lobbyists have such influence and pull over the American government that the politicians are unable to see past their wallets and routinely put down attempts to change the laws. I'm not a religious man, I don't believe in God, and I don't pray. That's a fact. But I would hope that logic and common sense will prevail, and that someday we look back at these senseless acts as a nightmare of yesterday, but it would appear that for the foreseeable future that this reality is the one we live in, and that is truly unfortunate. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we are breaking down the upcoming UFC 216 pay-per-view, which will feature the interim title fight of Tony Ferguson versus Kevin Lee for the lightweight title, along with the flyweight title bout with Demetrious Johnson taking on Ray Borg. Demetrious Johnson going for the record for most title defenses. This event will take place on October 7th, which is actually my middle son's birthday. Happy birthday to him. Very excited that way. I will be giving you my 5 main card predictions on this episode of the show. As is always the case, all of my preliminary breakdowns will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. The bet packs will also be posted and available on my website. And if you've been following and purchasing, which a lot of you have, I have been done very well lately. At UFC Fight Night 117, I went 9-1 overall. My big bankroll parlay returned almost 50 units, and my big reward parlay returned almost 120 units. Going back not that far prior to that, at UFC Fight Night 114, my big bankroll parlay just over 76 units won, and my big reward parlay just over 211 units won. So those are some big returns overall. Certainly worth cashing in. And it's only $15. I break down the entire card, so that's definitely worth taking a look at. In addition to that, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's KO_predictions. I'm also available on my YouTube. I think I surpassed 1,700 subscribers, which, hey, isn't half bad. And I think that's enough for me. Let's get to my first main card prediction. We open the main card up in the UFC's lightweight division as the number 12th ranked Beneil Dariush, 14 wins and 3 losses, takes on the 14th ranked Evan Dunham, currently holding a record of 17 wins and 6 defeats. Now, Dunham has won 4 consecutive fights, and he's really turned his career around of late after having lost 4 of his last 5. He's really picked up a nice winning streak. He's taken a bit of a step back in competition when you look at the guys he was losing to, the Donald Cerrone, Rafael Dos Anjos, Edson Barbosa, elite level guys, but certainly turned things around right now and got himself back into the conversation. For Dariush, he's coming off the 2nd knockout loss of his career. He had won back-to-back fights prior to that, and that loss on a brutal knockout against Edson Barbosa. Physically, both men 5'10". Dariush will have a 2-inch reach advantage, and he is 8 years younger than Evan Dunham. Dunham coming off a 13-month layoff as he heads into this bout. Now, it's worth noting that both men are very talented, very capable grapplers. Both BJJ black belts, both have 6 wins by submission. Both have also suffered a single loss in the same method. Now, looking at Evan Dunham first, he is a volume striker, and he has really picked up the pace of late. You look at some of his recent totals. Against Joe Lozon, he landed 127 strikes. In his win over Rodrigo Dam, 152. When you go back a little bit further against TJ Grant, he landed 160 significant strikes in a losing effort. He averages about 5.68 strikes landed per minute, which gives him not quite a edge over Dariush per minute of about 2 significant strikes landed. So that's a sizable number, especially if you get this fight going the full 15 minutes. Dunham does a nice job. He's really worked on it, striking fakes and feints. He throws exceptionally smooth combinations, and he doesn't throw 1 or 2 pitches either. 1 or 2 strikes. He throws 3 to 5 strikes in his combinations. He's got some good pop in his hands. He'll step into the pocket and let it go, and he does an excellent job of slipping his head off the center line to avoid absorbing those counter strikes. Additionally, what he does when he punches, if his opponent looks to shell up and use that guard to try and weather the storm, he will punch around that guard. He was doing that very effectively against Joe Lozon. He mixed in an uppercut as well and really snuck it up the middle, and he will finish his combinations with a low kick. So he throws a couple strikes that you think you've got covered because you got your hands up. He'll crack your bottom half of the low kick, and that can do a lot of damage. On the flip side, he tends to get hit a lot, and that's, again, a product of his aggressive forward push. He wears that damage. He will bleed, and that can impact the way the judges view that fight, view his performance. He's bleeding. He's taking damage. That can sway them. He's a good grappler, as I mentioned previously. He sets up his takedowns with strikes. When he lands takedowns and puts his opponents on their back, he has very good success overall in his fights, and he's a very smothering grappler. He has 10 takedowns over his last 4 victories. Conversely, over his last 3 defeats, he has been scored just 3 takedowns. Now, he seems to rely on his ability to put opponents on his back quite a lot when he's being successful. He mixes up with his volume striking, and that's very crucial. Now, for Dariush, who is also a good grappler, he has landed 0 takedowns in his last 3 victories. He has relied instead on his striking. He's outlanded some opponents who are striking based. Others have got the better of him. Against Edson Barboza in a fight he was for the most part winning, he landed 51 significant strikes to just 30 for Barboza before he got knocked out. He likes to paw with his right hand. He'll throw an overhand left as well. Very wide sweeping sometimes with his strikes. He rocked Michael Chiesa. He dropped James Vick as well with his offense. He's got some decent pop. Look for him to mix in a lot of kicks. He'll go head kick, push kick down the middle. He busted up Chiesa's lead leg. He also really battered Darren Cruikshank's body with kicks to the midsection. If his opponent elects to close the distance, he has an excellent tie clinch. He can control, attack, and really wear them out. Look for him to bury knees into his opponent's midsection and keep that shoulder pressure on when he backs him up against the cage. Again, he's just a very difficult fighter to deal with. On the flip side of things, when you look at the negatives, he was knocked out by Ramsey Nijem. Michael Johnson rocked him early in that fight. And he tends to leave his head on the center line when he is engaging, when he is attacking. He became a little bit too predictable against Barboza and allowed Barboza to eventually line up the jumping knee, the flying knee that scored the knockout. Where did I leave off? I had to pause for a moment and collect myself, but I've come back. I believe, talking about Beneil Dariush's, some of his faults. He was knocked out by Ramsey Nijem. I believe I might have said this already. Rocked by Michael Johnson. Again, he tends to move his head and moves straight back, keeps his head on the center line when he's under attack, and as I said, he was very predictable against Edson Barboza when he got knocked out. He uses a lot of constant forward pressure. He tends to get a little bit wild when he attacks, but I like the way he did this against Barboza. He was engaging him every time he set his feet, which prevented him from setting up his offense. Now, his cardio did slow a little bit, which is a concern against a guy like Evan Dunham, who's a very aggressive fighter in his own right. Now, for Dariush, if he opts to go to the mat, and he opts to go to the ground with his opponent, he's a suffocating top game. He's very good at holding top position. In his previous fights against a guy like Jim Miller, he's able to routinely get on top and hold that position and really shut it down. He also has very good takedown defense, which is worth noting against a guy like Evan Dunham, who thrives when he can put his opponent on the floor. Dunham's key here is volume and pulling away in the second half of the fight if Dariush starts to slow down. That's his key to victory. For Dariush, he needs to be aggressive. I feel he has the power edge. He looks like he's the more impactful striker overall. That should prevent and he has the takedown defense to prevent Dunham from landing takedowns, which, as I previously mentioned, is a crucial aspect of his success. I expect this to be a very close, very entertaining fight. I give the edge to Dariush with the heavier strikes and that constant forward pressure. I think he'll do damage on Evan Dunham. Dunham's been stopped a couple of times. And again, Dunham has struggled with these elite level guys. I think Dariush is one of them. My prediction is Beneil Dariush to defeat Evan Dunham by decision. Fight number 2 in the main card takes place in the women's strawweight division as a pair of UFC debutantes go head-to-head as Mara Romero Borella, 11-4-0 with 1-0 contest fighting out of Italy, takes on Brazil's Kalindra Faria with a current record of 18 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw. Now, I'm probably butchering these two ladies' names. This fight is replacing the Paige Van Zandt Jessica Eye fight that was originally scheduled to be on the main card here. As I said, we're in a division where they're currently searching for a champion on The Ultimate Fighter, so certainly these two ladies are attempting to grab a foothold with a future title shot on the line. Very similar to Joanna Jędrzejczyk did when that tournament was going on and she was looking to pick up some victories in the UFC proper. Now, Andrea Lee, another anticipated fighter who's expected to make her debut, was pulled from the card because she's previously failed a drug test. Didn't go through 6 months of the testing that she needs to do in order to get into the UFC. Now, Faria stayed on the card, her original opponent, and Borella was picked up to match her. Now, as this is fighting at strawweight, a division is growing, and again, they will be looking for post-tough title challengers, and that's certainly what this fight could produce. Now, both girls, as I said, are debuting, but they are coming out of good organizations. Faria last fought and won in Titan FC. It was just over a year ago. And she's a very well-traveled, and she's got a lot of experience, and she's fought some good fighters like Karolina Kowalkiewicz, Jessica Aguilera, and Claudia Gadelha. She lost all of them, but she's, those are big names to have fought in her career. For Borella, she actually is coming off a win over Milana Dudieva in last July, where she fought in Invicta. She is 2-0 in 2017, and she has fought 3 times since her opponent last competed. Physically, Faria is 1 inch taller. Borella will have a 3-inch reach advantage, and the girls are almost exactly the same age. Now, looking at Faria first, she has 7 wins by knockout, 5 submission wins, a 5-2 record on the scorecards. For her career, she has 1 loss by KO and 2 losses by submission. For Borella, 3 knockout victories, 4 submission victories, undefeated at 4-0 on the scorecards. She has been stopped with strikes 3 times and submitted once in her career. She's never gone the distance in defeat. When you look at Borella's last fight, she got stuck in the clinch a little bit against Milana Dudieva early on. She was looking routinely to try and lace up a leg, and she did find success taking her down and putting her on her back, and that's probably what she won a very close and contentious split decision with. Once on top, she's got pretty heavy top position. She does a good job of passing the guard. She'll work her way into mount. She did get caught in a triangle, showed good submission defense, and eventually worked her way out of the position to get the advantageous spot where she could go to work from. But again, you have to be very careful. Once on top, landed some good ground and pound against the defended submissions, and she's always looking to advance her position. Now, Dudieva did have some success early on taking her down, and we saw Borella attack off her back with a submission attempt and eventually forced Dudieva out of that position of dominance. She was getting backed up a little bit early on the feet. She throws a decent left jab. She keeps her hands up. She doesn't show anything too flashy with her striking offense, and I wasn't overly impressed with that vertical output. But again, you never know. Fighting in Invicta, I think it was her debut in that organization. There could have been some butterflies. There could be some butterflies here. For Faria, she's coming off winning the Titan FC Bantamweight title in her last fight. She is coming off a sizable layoff as well, which is certainly concerning. But again, with not young fighters, but fighters that are changing divisions maybe, it's certainly worth doing that. Putting that time in to make sure they do things correctly. She throws a decent left jab. She wings a big overhand right. She'll step into the pocket and throw, and she'll let go and flurry. She tends to attack in spurts, which, it's good. I like that. At the same time, I like to see her kind of level things out, be a little more even with her offensive output. She landed a nice high kick in her last fight. She'll throw some decent low kicks as well. She's the more active striker when you compare the two, her and Borella. She'll punch her way into the clinch, look for trip takedowns. Again, she holds top position from guard. I like the way she frames that elbow to really neutralize her opponent and then attack the body, make them guard the body, and then go to the head as well. There's a lot of X factors here. Short notice fight for both girls and their debut. Prolonged layoff for Faria. We don't know how this is going to affect these two ladies and who's going to show up and what they're going to perform like. Overall, though, I look at Faria's record. She's the more experienced fighter with quantity and quality of fight. She went a split decision in 2015 with Kowalkiewicz, which is no easy feat. She went 5 rounds with Jessica Aguilera back in 2015, fighting for the World Series of Fighting. Those are some impressive performances there. Faria is aggressive on the feet. I think Borella's been stopped, I said, 3 times by strikes. I think that shows up here. So my prediction for this matchup is Kalindra Faria to defeat Mara Romero Borella. That's a mouthful. I'll take Faria by knockout. I'd just like to apologize, ladies and gentlemen. You might notice I'm mumbling and stumbling over my words just a little bit. I appear to be slightly distracted, but we'll try our best to persevere and work our way through this. Our next fight is a fantastic matchup in the heavyweight division featuring the former champion, the number 2 ranked Fabricio Werdum, 21 wins, 7 losses, and 1 draw, taking the 6th ranked, the Black Beast, Derrick Lewis, 18 wins, 5 losses, and 1 no contest. Now, Werdum is coming off a loss to Alistair Overeem, a very close loss that certainly has backed him up out of title contention for at least a fight or two, but he needs a win here to get himself back on track. For Lewis, he is also coming off a loss. It came to Mark Hunt. It ended a 6-fight winning streak that had him certainly in position to contend for a shot at the title. He then talked about retirement the last time he was going to fight after that fight. He obviously was getting married a week later, which certainly offered some distractions. Fortunately for us, he is back in action for this matchup and certainly looking to make himself known as a legitimate heavyweight contender. For Werdum, he's 1 inch taller than Lewis. Lewis will have a 2-inch reach advantage, and the Black Beast is the younger man by 8 years. Both fighters are incredibly dangerous on the mat, but for vastly different reasons. That's the first thing to really focus on here. Werdum, we know he's one of the best, if not the best, ground fighter in the heavyweight division. A submission expert, BJJ black belt. For Lewis, he is a absolute destroyer of lives from top position once he starts unloading the ground and pound, and will just ruin opponents and makes it to the point where everything he does is just violence incarnate. But looking at Werdum first, despite his skills on the ground, he's not a massive takedown threat. If the fight hits the mat, look the fuck out. But he is not a massive takedown threat by any stretch of the imagination. He is dangerous in all areas. He can catch a sub off his back, but probably, I would say, just like against Overeem, he doesn't want Derrick Lewis on top, landing big shots. Now, Fabricio's rise into contention was the direct result of his vastly improved striking arsenal. He has significantly upped his vertical offense, and that is big. He put up impressive numbers against Travis Brown, I believe, in the first fight, landing 84. He then 96 against Kane when he won the title. 121 in his most recent fight against Brown, which is even more impressive. And it's 121, I believe. Either way, he puts up some big striking numbers, which those are significant totals for a heavyweight. We saw with that flying side kick to the face against Brown early on. He throws a cartwheel kick. And the big thing with Fabricio, he will try anything simply because he's not afraid to go to the mat. He's one of these guys who, if you have, he'll throw stuff because if you jump in his guard, look out, you are in serious, serious trouble. Now, he does have power in his right hand. He throws some very good low kicks, a push kick as well. He'll attack from the clinch. And he's always engaging. He moves forward, sometimes a little bit too aggressively. That did cost him against Stipe, lost him the title fight when he walked into that knockout. He was landing against Brown with quick flurries and really engaging him on the inside nicely. He did benefit from Travis Brown not throwing a ton of offense back the other way, but still, Fabricio was really dictating the pace in that fight. At times, he's a little bit too loose with his defense. His hands are a little bit too down. Again, he moves forward a little bit recklessly, but that's something to keep in mind. Against a top-level counter-striker, that's really not what Derrick Lewis is here. Now, Derrick Lewis, his strongest point is when he can take his opponent down, especially along the cage, work and control the position, and unload with that powerful, deadly those top position strikes. The other thing he does exceptionally well is he can turn offensive opportunities for his opponents on the mat into opportunities for him to do damage, if not finish the fight. If his opponent fails on a takedown attempt or even puts him on the ground, he's very capable of getting up or countering the position to put himself in a spot to land strikes. When he fought Gabriel Gonzaga, who's a very talented ground fighter in his own right, Gonzaga got him down. Lewis remained calm, eventually got back up, shook him off, and went to work with strikes. Now, his offense on the feet is still improving. Because he has such big power, that makes him super dangerous. We saw him land some massive shots against Roy Nelson, cracked him several times, but against Shamil Abdurrahimov and against Mark Hunt, he simply struggled to get in range to land any offense. And you can almost see there's a little bit of hesitancy where he doesn't want to push forward because I wouldn't say he's afraid to get hit, but he knows the risk involved with getting cracked, and we have seen him knocked out. He tends to throw a lot of single strikes, big kicks, uppercuts, everything he throws is hard. He steps in very well. When he took out Gabriel Gonzaga, he caught him with a shot along the cage where it was just a flurry of offense that eventually put him down, landing a big right hand. He will overextend at times. He will brawl. He will telegraph his punches. They can be seen coming, and he will slow down, and that's a huge concern. Against Matt Mitrione, he walked into a forearm for the knockout, couldn't recover. He was dropped by the hook kick of Sean Jordan back in the day that put him down as well. When he fought Travis Brown, he simply had trouble closing the distance. He eventually got in there and he hurt Brown and eventually took him out. He seemed hesitant against Hunt, unable to close that gap, unable to land enough or complete enough takedowns to do anything there. He didn't complete a single takedown in that fight, and that really takes away what he's capable of. Lewis, I don't think, is going to want to tangle with Fabricio Werdum on the mat. I think he's going to want to stand up with him and avoid going to the ground with a guy with a guard like that. At the same time, I wouldn't risk it up from top position if I'm Fabricio. Werdum is a far superior striker in technique. Lewis certainly has the power edge. Both have a bit of questionable chins, have been knocked out in the past. I think Verdum's going to land the better strikes. He's going to back Lewis off, who's not going to have the weapon of the takedown to rely on. I think Verdum's cardio is superior, and my prediction is Fabricio Werdum to take out Derrick Lewis by, I'm going to say, decision. In the co-main event of the evening, we have the UFC's flyweight title on the line, and history is on the line as well as the champion, Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson, 26 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw, takes on the Taz Mexican Devil, the number 3 ranked Ray Borg, with a current record of 11 wins and 2 defeats. As I said, Demetrious Johnson going for history, having an opportunity to win what would be, I believe, let's take a look at the number, his 11th consecutive title defense, which would break Anderson Silva's record for 10 title defenses he did at middleweight. DJ overall has won 12 straight fights, and that is very, very impressive. And this is, we know this fight was supposed to take place at a previous event. It was just pushed to this one with Borg pulling out at the last second. But this is also the first time we've seen DJ compete since that very public spat with the UFC over the TJ Dillashaw fight and the treatment of the champion, the reigning champion of the division. Borg, he's only 2 fights removed coming into this matchup from a loss to Justin Scoggins. He has won 2 in a row, a very big win over Jussier Formiga, a very close fight. Jussier, overall, his losses prior to that against John Dodson, Joseph Benavidez, Henry Cejudo, all guys have challenged the title before, obviously coming up short. Those are some big, impressive names, and now Borg adds his name to that collection. Physically, Borg is 1 inch taller than the champion. DJ will have a 3 inch reach advantage, and the challenger is 7 years his younger. Now, Borg is an impressive talent. He's coming off a big win, but is he really ready for this level of competition? Very few are. No one actually has proven they are yet in this division. I don't know if Borg is either. DJ is coming off a very impressive submission win over Wilson Hayes, a BJJ black belt who had never been submitted before. DJ, of course, the first man to tap him out. He was coming off a much closer than expected fight against Tim Elliott that he really had some issues with early on that made me believe that DJ wanted to do something impressive here, and I certainly think he did, picking up that tap-out victory. You know, you look at the champion, he has so many things going for him. He's incredibly technical. His cardio is impressive. He maintains an even but very rapid pace. He's very fast. He's hard to hit. He mixes his wrestling and striking together. He varies his attacks so effectively. He just does it all. That's why he's widely considered the best pound-for-pound fighter in the game today. Who has had success against him and how? Dominic Cruz beat him with takedowns when he fought for the bantamweight title. That was a great fight. I really liked that fight. John Dodson cracked him a couple of times early in that matchup. You know, Tim Elliott won the early grappling attacks and actually had a couple early submission attempts that certainly had people wondering if this is a huge upset in the making. But again, far and few between. The biggest thing that really stands out to me with Johnson is he adapts and gets better as the fight goes. He rarely gets flustered. You know, a lot of us get flustered, but he rarely gets flustered. He always seems to have an answer for what his opponent is going to do, and he's able to modify his game plan during a fight to address it. And that's, you know, and the way he's able to keep engaging his opponent and going forward and pushing and attacking, it can be very discouraging for a fighter who just doesn't know how to crack him, doesn't know how to get through his offense. Statistically, DJ and Borg have identical strikes absorbed per minute, 1.71. DJ has done it against much better competition. A big difference on the strikes landed per minute. DJ almost 2 more strikes over 25 minutes. And that's a plus 50 edge if he's able to do that. Plus 50 strikes more than Borg will land in a fight if he's able to do that. You know, you look at his last fight against Wilson Hayes, he landed 108 significant strikes. Hayes landed 16. So that should give you an idea prior to the submission victory. Borg is coming off his first UFC victory that didn't involve him landing a takedown. He has landed 13 takedowns in his 4 UFC wins prior to that fight. He landed 5 in a debut loss, 1 against Justin Scoggins, but for the most part, when he doesn't land takedowns, he's not nearly as successful. DJ, 64% takedown defense. He's been taken down in the past. Timmy Elliott took him down 4 times. Ali Bogatinov twice, several singles by some opponents, but again, it's difficult to take him down. It's even harder to keep him down. Borg has good takedowns. He has good control. He'll hold position. He's an excellent scrambler. Very smooth back take, very impressive back take. He can counter out of some bad spots, and that's something, if he can be opportunistic, especially early when they're dry, that could be his best bet to pick up the victory. He never stops engaging. He keeps going. He's got some, you know, he'll slam his opponent to the mat, moves into side control very fluidly, and he'll flow from there right into mount. When he fought Louis Smolka, he defended his submissions and gained superior position with the defensive work early on. Not a lot of ground and pound, did some damage against Smolka though. It's just, he's not and the thing is, if he can't get the fight to the mat, he's not a dominant striker. He will look to close the distance. He'll land some knees in the clinch. He throws a decent left hook, lots of stance switches, but a lot of single strikes and just not the offensive output that I previously mentioned that is going to win him this fight. He hasn't shown the power capable of hurting DJ. That's a concern. He struggled with closing the gap against Justin Scoggins. He's going to struggle to find DJ because of his movement, because of his variety, because of how just everything he's able to do, and that makes him so difficult to engage. Can Borg get him down? More importantly, can he keep him down? Can he keep it going over 5 rounds? So even if he takes him down early, can he keep him down? And if he can keep him down for a round or even 2, can he still do it over the next couple of rounds where he needs to do enough to win the fight? Elliott was able to land some takedowns throughout the fight, but with lessening significance because DJ just keeps getting back up. Borg is tough. The cardio edge for DJ will be significant. It could get him a late stoppage, but my prediction is Demetrious Johnson to defeat Ray Borg by decision. We move now to the main event of the evening. This should be a very, very entertaining fight. It is the interim lightweight championship bout between the number 2 ranked Tony El Cucuy Ferguson, currently holding a record of 23 wins and 3 losses, taking on the 7th ranked Kevin the Motown Phenom Lee, 16 wins and 2 defeats for Lee. Now, it's an interim lightweight title fight. Winner knows they will either get a shot at Conor McGregor, which is a huge opportunity if he ever comes back and defends his belt, or they become the real champion if he does opt to not come back and they strip him of the title. So it's a win-win for either fighter. Who knew winning a fight is a good thing? Lee has won 5. These guys are coming in on impressive runs. Lee has won 5 consecutive fights and 9 of his last 10. His only loss in that span was a TKO defeat to Leonardo Santos. He has finished 4 in a row. Overall, all opponents that he defeated were all looking very good coming into their matchups. His last 4 victories came over opponents with a combined winning streak of 25 consecutive fights prior to Lee defeating them. That's impressive. Ferguson, not to be outdone. He has won 9 fights in a row and 15 of his last 16. He's coming off a win over the former champion. He submitted Edson Barboza not that long ago, and he beat the absolute brakes of the now Bellator-owned Josh Thompson. Physically, Ferg, 2 inches taller. Lee will have a 1-inch reach advantage, which that's great for him, but he has a very long reach, which usually gives him a sizable reach advantage. That's not the case here, but he is the younger man by 8 years. Both guys have ridiculous cardio, which is certainly worth noting as well. Coming into this, I would give the edge, though, to Ferguson overall. We'll talk about that more in a moment. Tony hasn't fought in 11 months. That's significant. He's been out of action for a little bit with fights not transpiring. Lee has fought 3 times since Ferg last hit the cage, so that's worth noting as well. On the numbers, Tony Ferguson, 9 wins by knockout, 8 submission victories, 5-2 in the scorecards. Kevin Lee, 1-1 in fights ended by knockout, 8-0 in fights ended by submission, and 7-1 on the scorecards. That loss coming against Ali Aquinta. Looking at Tony Ferguson first, Al Kukui, an incredibly unorthodox striker. He throws caution to the wind, diving on submissions. He's an unorthodox fighter, let's put it that way. He pushes fighters. He has an endless gas tank. He takes what I like as the racehorse approach. He's going to push you right out of the gate, and you'll either get overwhelmed and get finished, or you're going to crash and get finished because you won't be able to match him. Rafael dos Anjos, who's an incredible fighter, did probably the best of anybody in recent memory, pushing him and lasting right to the end, not succumbing to Tony Ferguson's push and aggression. But, hey, at the same time, he lost the fight, so it still worked. Tony loves to beat the brakes off guys, simply beat them down, and force them to shoot or clinch up or engage, and then when they're exhausted, they're not able to defend as well as they should be, he locks up a dart stroke. He has those really long limbs that really makes him difficult to handle on the mat. He has given up takedowns, but in previous weeks, but he's so active off his back with submission attempts, he's very difficult to hang on to, very dangerous to deal with on the floor. When he's striking, long strikes. He has an excellent chin. He throws very hard. He's willing to stand in the pocket. He throws chopping leg kicks, always engaging. He does tend to leave himself a little bit open, which can get him countered at times. And he seems a little bit, he can be, his chin, okay, we saw Lando Vannata hurt him a couple of times. So it's certainly like he's not impenetrable to taking damage. But against Rafael dos Anjos, he seemed a little bit less reckless. Still very effective, still pushed the pace, still led the majority of the exchanges, but he wasn't risking quite as much as we saw in previous fights. Maybe that was a product of what Vannata did to him. I don't know. Now, Lee, when you look at Kevin Lee, he's relied heavily on his takedowns. When he fought Islam Mustafayev, he landed 7. He's landed at least 1 takedown in all but 1 of his 9 fights. He's coming off that submission win, that controversial submission win against Michael Chiesa. So again, you see how important it is for him to be on the mat. Look for him to land body lock takedowns. He's very difficult in the clinch to deal with. He'll throw fake strikes to set up his shot and then change levels exceptionally quickly, very smooth. He does not telegraph his takedowns. He flows into those shot attempts exceptionally well. A couple of times we saw Mustafayev catch him with a guillotine, but again, he gets out, he's on top, he was where he wants to be, and he goes to work. Once on the mat, he's incredibly active. He's constantly looking to advance position, smother his opponent, looking to wear them down and finish them. His back take, his back mount, whether it be strikes or submissions, is very effective as well. Now, on the feet, he's not an overwhelming striker. His last 3-round fight, he landed 64 significant strikes. His best was against John Tucker, where he landed 74. Those are decent numbers, but they're not the type of numbers where you're going to say, his opponent won't be able to deal with that. He uses a very long left jab to keep his opponent on the outside. And again, but it's that reach. That reach factor is not going to be there against Tony Ferguson, and that's worth noting as well. He doesn't have a ton of power. 1 knockout win. Again, it's more like death by accumulations where he's going to put up. He throws a decent 1-2, not really flashy, light on his feet. He throws some quick kicks, a long straight right, and he's always moving. Now, one of the negatives, though, with Kevin Lee is he was knocked out by Santos. He was hurt by Efrain Escudero, and Francisco Trinaldo hurt him as well with a big overhand left. He's been hurt with punches to the body. And, at times he's a little less willing to engage once he takes a little bit of damage. He will get backed off. Ultimately, Ferguson needs to avoid giving up position. Lee can finish him if he gets the opportunity, especially early in that fight. Ferguson's volume and pace, though, is going to be too much for Lee to deal with. Lee won't have that big reach advantage he's used to having to keep his opponents on the outside and hit them before they can hit him. He won't be able to find those takedowns and not consistently enough. And he leaves his chin up at times, a little exposed, which is certainly concerning. And I really think we're going to see Ferguson really put it on him, look to make a mark. And my prediction is Tony Ferguson to defeat Kevin Lee by TKO. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 216. Hopefully you can make sense of everything that I was able to blurt out tonight. Again, my thoughts go out to the families affected by the tragedy in Las Vegas. It's very unfortunate. I don't like to make things political, but at the same time it's worth stating. Getting back to mixed martial arts, my bet packs will be available for purchase at kamikazeoverdrive.net, along with the preliminary predictions, all of those things available as well. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this card. We've got a very busy end of the year coming up. I am still searching for UFC to try and acquire 300 victories in a year. As I said, back in 2014, I hit 299. This year, I'm at 206 with October, November, December left, which leaves me an average of roughly 30 wins per month. That's going to be difficult, but not impossible. We'll see if we can get October off to a good start. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I always appreciate it. Everyone who tunes in listens to my show, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Good night.